This is the story of a real Christmas night horror that I'm going to tell you. It happened a few years ago, and to this day, I still get chills thinking about it. So listen closely, because once you hear this, you might never look at Christmas the same way again. It all began with my friend Ben. He lived in this small town in Vermont. Lots of snow, cozy houses, Christmas lights everywhere. It was the kind of town that looked like it came out of a postcard. That year, Ben invited a few of us, me, Sarah, and Mike, to spend Christmas with him at his grandparents' old cabin deep in the woods. They had passed away a long time ago, and the place had been empty ever since. We were all in our 20s, just finished with college, and thought it would be fun to spend a quiet Christmas away from the city. The idea of a snowy cabin, warm fire, and just us and nature sounded perfect. So we packed up, drove for hours, and reached the cabin a few days before Christmas. The place looked beautiful, but old. It had this creaky wooden floor, stone fireplace, and old furniture covered in white sheets. But the strangest thing was this old, dusty Santa Claus figure sitting in the corner. Not a cute, jolly one. This one was tall, its red suit faded and its face cracked like old paint. It wore a grin that didn't feel friendly. Ben said his grandfather made it by hand and always kept it out for good luck during Christmas. This first night was peaceful. We cooked, played board games, and laughed a lot. The snow outside kept falling heavily and it got colder. Around midnight, we heard a thump from upstairs. We all stopped talking and looked at each other. Probably just the snow on the roof, Ben said, trying to sound calm. We agreed, though something about it felt heavy, like it wasn't snow. We went to bed around 1. I was sharing a room with Mike, and we could hear the wind howling. But around 3 a.m., I woke up to the sound of whispering. Very low, but definitely there. I thought maybe Sarah and Ben were up talking, so I got out of bed and went to the hallway. But everything was dark. The only light came from the moon shining through the window. I checked their rooms. Everyone was asleep. Then I heard it again. A whisper. It came from downstairs. I thought maybe it was the wind, but I knew it wasn't. It was too clear, like someone saying words I couldn't quite understand. I went back to bed trying to convince myself I was imagining things, but I didn't sleep well. The next morning, I told everyone what I heard. Sarah looked pale. She said she had a nightmare that someone in a Santa costume was standing over her bed, just watching. Not doing anything, just watching. Ben laughed and said it was probably the creepy Santa doll in the living room getting into our heads. He offered to put it in the closet, but we joked and said to leave it. I wish we hadn't. That night, we lit the fireplace and sat around it telling stories. Around 10, we all heard a loud bang from upstairs, like something heavy falling. We ran up and found that the mirror in the hallway had fallen and shattered. No one had touched it. It had been hanging tight the whole time. We cleaned it up and came back down, feeling a little nervous now. I kept looking at that Santa figure. Its head was slightly turned, as if it was watching us. I thought maybe someone moved it earlier, but no one admitted it. At midnight, we all went to sleep. This time I locked the door to my room. Around 2 a.m. the sound came again, whispering. But this time it wasn't soft. It was loud, clear. I could hear it say something like, "Are you awake?" Over and over again. I was frozen in bed. Mike was asleep. I shook him, and he mumbled something and rolled over. Then I heard the footsteps. Slow, heavy ones coming up the stairs. They weren't trying to be quiet. Then the doorknob rattled. I held my breath, and then it stopped. I stayed like that until morning. At breakfast, I told everyone again. This time, everyone had something to say. Ben swore he heard someone walking around outside. Sarah said her door was open when she woke up, even though she remembered locking it. And Mike finally admitted he heard footsteps too, but thought it was a dream. That morning, we decided to leave. We packed up quickly, but when we went outside, the car wouldn't start. Battery dead. Ben tried everything, but nothing worked. We had no cell service and couldn't walk to town in the snow. We had to stay one more night. We moved the Santa doll to a back room and locked the door. None of us wanted it near us. Night came early, and the fear in the house was thick. We didn't talk much, just sat around the fireplace holding mugs of coffee like it would protect us. Around 11, the fire started to die, and Ben went to get more wood from the back room, the same room where we locked the Santa figure. He was gone for 10 minutes. When he came back, his face was pale, eyes wide. He dropped the wood on the floor. The door. It was open, he whispered. And the Santa doll, it's gone. We searched the whole cabin. It wasn't anywhere. Then the power went out. Darkness. Total silence. Sarah screamed. We grabbed flashlights and stayed close. Then, suddenly, on the wooden wall near the stairs, we saw it, written in something dark. You're not alone. We ran into one room and locked the door. We didn't sleep. We waited until morning. As the sun rose, the power came back on. The car started. It was like nothing had ever happened. We drove straight back to town. Never looked back. Weeks later, Ben went back to the cabin with his uncle. Everything looked normal, except for one thing. That creepy Santa figure was back in the corner, just sitting there, grinning. Ben sold the cabin that spring, and none of us ever celebrated Christmas the same way again. So, yeah, this is the true Christmas time horror story. I wanted to tell you. Some say it was all in our heads, maybe too much wine or the isolation. But I know what I heard, what I saw, and every Christmas Eve when the wind howls, I swear, I still hear that whisper. Are you awake? This is the story of a true Christmas time horror I'm going to tell you. It didn't happen to me, but to someone I knew. Her name was Olivia, and once you hear it, you'll never forget it. Olivia had just moved to a small town in Maine. She was a nurse and had taken a new job in the local hospital. The town was quiet, surrounded by forests and lakes, and during Christmas, it looked magical. Snow covered everything. Houses were decorated with lights and wreaths. People smiled on the streets. It was her first Christmas away from family, so she planned to spend it alone. She didn't mind. She had a small house near the woods, cozy and warm. She bought herself a little tree, some fairy lights, and a few gifts to open on Christmas morning. She was going to rest, drink hot cocoa, and watch movies. But something strange started happening the week before Christmas. At first it was small. One morning, she found muddy footprints in the snow outside her front door. They were bare feet, no shoes, just human footprints leading up to her door, and then disappearing. She thought maybe it was a prank, maybe some kid from the town playing a joke. Then 2 nights later, she woke up to the sound of bells. Not like church bells. They were small, like jingle bells, the kind people put on Christmas decorations. But they were moving, shaking slowly, like someone was walking with them. She got out of bed and checked the windows. No one was there. The snow was untouched. Everything was silent again. On December 23rd, she got home from work late. It was dark and snow was falling. As she parked the car, she saw something in her window. Just for a second. A figure. Tall. Standing still. Then it was gone. She rushed inside, turned on all the lights and searched the house. No one was there. Nothing was missing. But the weirdest thing was waiting for her in the living room. Someone had placed a candy cane on her coffee table. It wasn't there in the morning. She didn't own any candy canes. This one was handmade. Twisted red and white, but thicker, heavier, and it smelled strange. Like iron. She threw it away and locked all the doors. That night, she barely slept. On Christmas Eve, things got worse. She worked the morning shift and got home before sunset. The snow was falling heavily now, covering everything in white. She walked up to her door and froze. There was something hanging from her doorknob, a Christmas stocking. It was old, torn and dirty. Something dark stained the bottom. She didn't want to touch it, but she had no choice. She opened it carefully, and inside was a small piece of paper. One word was written on it in red ink. Tonight. She dropped the stocking and ran inside. She called the police. They came quickly, checked the house, and found nothing. They said it might be someone from the town playing tricks. Maybe an old neighbor who didn't like strangers. They promised to send a patrol car by later. Olivia didn't feel safe. She pushed a chair in front of the door, closed all the windows, and turned on every light in the house. She tried to distract herself, played music, watched TV, but she kept checking the windows, sure someone was out there in the snow. At midnight, it started. First, the power went out, all at once. Darkness filled the house. Only the moon and the snow gave a little light through the windows. Then, the bells. Soft, slow, getting louder. She grabbed her phone, turned on the flashlight, and stood. Still, her heart was pounding. The sound was coming from the back door. She walked slowly, trying not to make a sound. Then, knock, knock, knock. 3 loud knocks on the door. She screamed and dropped her phone. The flashlight went out. Everything was black. She stood there, frozen, waiting for another knock. But there was silence. She picked up the phone. The screen was cracked, but the light worked. She turned it on and looked around. Still no one. Then she saw it. On the window, drawn in the frost with a finger, were the words, "Let me in." She ran upstairs and locked herself in her bedroom. The bells started again, now louder, closer, then footsteps, slow, heavy, moving through the house. The floor creaked. Someone was inside. She held her breath and hid under the bed. She could hear him now. Breathing, walking. She saw boots, large, black, muddy, the kind old Santa figures wear. Then she saw part of a red coat, dirty, torn, dragging on the floor. He was standing in her room. Then he bent down. His face appeared under the bed. It was pale, dry, cracked like old wood. His beard was tangled, his eyes empty, but the smile, that awful smile, stretched too wide like it had been carved. He whispered, "Merry Christmas," and then he was gone. Just like that. Olivia stayed under the bed till morning. When light came, she finally came out. The house was empty. No sign of anyone. She called the police again. They searched. They found no footprints, no signs of forced entry. Nothing. but the words "let me in" were still on the window. They thought she imagined it. Maybe stress. Maybe no sleep. They didn't believe her. She moved out the next day. Never spent Christmas alone again. Years later, she heard stories from old people in town. They told her there was once a man, long ago, who dressed as Santa and visited homes. But he didn't bring gifts. He brought fear. They called him the Hollow Claus. They said he walked the snowy nights looking for lonely houses, looking for people who were alone, people he could visit. No one ever found out what he wanted. No one ever caught him. Some say he was just a story to scare kids, but Olivia knows the truth. So this Christmas, when the snow falls and the night gets quiet, if you hear jingle bells in the dark, if you see a stocking that wasn't yours, if you find a candy cane that smells wrong, don't open the door. Don't look outside. And whatever you do, don't let him in. This is the story of a true Christmas time horror I'm going to tell you. It happened to my cousin Ben just a few years ago. Every time I think about it, I still get chills down my spine. It sounds like something from a scary movie. But trust me, this really happened. Ben had always loved Christmas. He loved decorating, baking cookies, and playing holiday music all day long. That year, he decided to spend Christmas alone in a small cabin he had just bought deep in the woods. He said he wanted peace and quiet, far away from the city noise and stress. The cabin was old but cozy. It had a fireplace, wooden floors, and a big window that looked out into the snowy forest. It was the perfect Christmas spot. Ben took his dog, Max, with him. Max was a big German shepherd, loyal and protective. Ben drove up to the cabin 2 days before Christmas. He brought food, firewood, decorations, and a small Christmas tree. He called us that night to say everything was perfect. He was happy, but the next night, things started to go wrong. It was Christmas Eve. Around 9 p.m., Ben was sitting by the fire drinking hot chocolate and watching a movie. Max was lying at his feet. Everything was peaceful. Then, out of nowhere, Max jumped up and started growling. Not barking, growling, deep and low. His ears were up. He was staring at the front door like someone was on the other side. Ben paused the movie and got up. "Is someone there?" he shouted. No answer. He turned off the lights inside and looked out the window. Snow was falling gently, covering everything. At first he saw nothing, but then he saw something move. A figure. Tall, thin, and wearing what looked like a black coat. The person was standing still, just a few feet from the porch, not moving, not speaking. Ben opened the door slightly and yelled, "Hey, are you lost?" The figure didn't reply, just stood there, watching. Then slowly, it turned around and walked back into the woods. Ben shut the door, locked it, and stood there for a while, heart pounding. Who would be out here this late in the middle of nowhere during a snowstorm? He told himself maybe it was a hiker who got lost, but something didn't feel right. Max kept growling all night. Around midnight, Ben went to bed. He kept the fireplace going and left a few lights on. Max lay near the bedroom door. Sometime in the middle of the night, Ben woke up to a sound. Knock. 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 3 slow knocks on the cabin wall. Not the door, the wall. Like someone was outside, knocking from the side of the house. Then, footsteps, crunching softly in the snow, walking around the cabin slowly, Max jumped up, barking this time, loud and wild. Ben grabbed a flashlight and looked outside the window again, but now the snow was falling harder, and he couldn't see much. He waited, heart racing. He didn't sleep again that night. The next morning, Christmas Day, Ben walked around the outside of the cabin, and what he found was terrifying. There were footprints in the snow, bare feet, no shoes, just human feet. They went all around the cabin, stopping at every window, and then disappearing into the woods. Even worse, on the front porch someone had left something. A gift, wrapped in red paper with a gold ribbon. Ben didn't touch it at first. He called the local police. They told him they'd send someone, but with the snowstorm, it might take a while. Hours passed. No one came. So finally, Ben opened the gift. Inside was a small wooden figure, a carving of a person with a strange face. No eyes, no mouth, just a smooth round head and long arms. It was creepy and cold to the touch, like it had been outside for hours. Ben threw it into the fireplace. The wood hissed and crackled, and that's when Max started barking again, louder than before. Ben turned around. Someone was standing at the window, looking in. He couldn't see the face, just the dark shape and the long arms. Ben grabbed his phone to call 911, but there was no signal. The snowstorm had cut off everything. He turned off the lights, grabbed Max, and locked himself in the bedroom. He pushed a dresser in front of the door. Outside, the wind howled and the trees creaked. Then he heard scratching, fingernails against the cabin walls, long, slow scratches that moved from one side to the other. Ben held Max close. He didn't sleep. He just waited for the sun to rise. When it finally did, everything was quiet. The scratching had stopped. Ben packed his things and left that morning. He didn't wait for police. He didn't wait to see anything else. He just got into his truck and drove until he got phone signal, then called the police again. When they finally came and checked the cabin, they didn't find anything. No figure, no footprints. The snow had covered it all. But they did find something strange in the ashes of the fireplace. The wooden figure hadn't burned completely. The head was gone, but the long arms were still there. The police couldn't explain it. Ben never went back to that cabin. He sold it a month later. Now every year when Christmas comes, he refuses to be alone. He makes sure he's with people. He locks every door, he keeps the lights on, and he tells everyone the same thing. If you're alone on Christmas night and you hear a knock, not on your door but on the wall, don't look outside. Don't open any strange gifts, and whatever you do, don't let it in. Because some Christmas visitors aren't here to spread joy. This is the story of a true Christmas-time horror that happened to my friend Sarah. It's the kind of story you hear around a campfire, but it's all too real. After I tell you this, I know you'll think twice about how you spend your holidays, especially if you're alone. It all started on Christmas Eve. Sarah had been looking forward to a quiet Christmas. Her parents lived far away, and she had just moved to a small apartment on the outskirts of town. It was a peaceful place, tucked away in a quiet neighborhood. She had decorated her apartment with lights, a small tree, and some stockings. The snow outside made it feel like something out of a Christmas movie. Sarah had planned to spend the night watching Christmas movies, sipping hot cocoa, and enjoying the cozy atmosphere. But by 10 p.m., she started feeling strange. It was as if something was off. She couldn't put her finger on it, but she kept checking the windows and the door, making sure everything was locked. The quiet of the snow-covered night made everything seem more eerie. At first, it was a small sound, a faint tapping at the window. She brushed it off as the wind, but then it came again. Tap, tap, tap. She went to the window and peered outside. Nothing. Just the snow falling, covering the street and trees. No one in sight. Shrugging it off, she went back to her couch, grabbed her blanket, and tried to get comfortable. But soon she heard something again. This time, it was a knock on her door. Knock, knock, knock. She froze. It was late. No one should be coming to her door at this hour. Who would even be out there in the snowstorm? Hesitantly, she stood up, walked to the door, and peeked through the peephole. Nothing. She opened the door a little, just enough to look around the hallway. Empty. No one was there. Confused, she closed the door and locked it again. Maybe she was just imagining things. The storm outside was intense, and she had been inside for hours, alone. She went back to her couch, trying to shake off the weird feeling that had taken hold of her. But then, the tapping started again. And this time, it was louder. Tap, tap, tap. She looked at the window, but still, no one was outside. A chill ran down her spine. She got up and went to the window, her breath fogging up the glass as she peered outside. For a moment she saw nothing, just the swirls of snow. But then, just for a second, she thought she saw something moving in the distance, a shadow standing still by the trees. It was tall, thin, and covered in a dark coat. The figure didn't move, just stood there watching. Sarah's heart raced. She backed away from the window and sat down on the couch, trying to calm herself. Maybe it was a trick of the light, she told herself, or perhaps someone else had gotten stuck in the snowstorm and was waiting for help. But as the night wore on, the unsettling feeling didn't leave her. She turned on her favorite Christmas movie to distract herself. But the tapping at the window continued like a clock ticking away in the silence of her apartment. Tap, tap, tap. Louder and faster now. It was as if the sound was getting closer. She stood up, her hands shaking. It was time to check outside for good. She grabbed her phone, turned on the flashlight, and walked cautiously toward the window again. This time she made sure the blinds were pulled completely open. She shone the light out into the darkness, but again, nothing. She was about to turn away when she saw it. A face. It was a man's face, pressed up against the glass, staring in at her. His eyes were wide and empty, like he hadn't blinked in days. His skin was pale, and his hair was matted and dirty. He had a twisted, crooked smile. Sarah screamed, stumbling backward. She slammed the blinds shut and backed away from the window, her heart pounding in her chest. She called the police. They told her they would send someone, but it would take time due to the storm. In the meantime, they advised her to stay inside and lock all the doors and windows. Sarah did exactly that. She checked every lock, bolted the windows shut, and made sure nothing could get inside. But the tapping at the window didn't stop. In fact, it grew louder, more frantic, as if whoever was out there was getting desperate. The clock ticked past midnight, and Sarah was sitting in the corner of her living room, clutching a knife for protection. Max, her cat, was curled up on her lap, trembling. The sound of the storm outside was deafening, but the tapping was still there, like a constant, nagging presence. Suddenly, she heard something different, scratching. Not on the window, but on the door. It was slow at first, just a faint scraping sound. But then it got louder, more insistent. She grabbed her phone again and called 911. 911, what's your emergency? The dispatcher said. "There's someone at my door," Sarah cried. "They're scratching at it. I don't know what they want, but I'm scared." "Stay calm, ma'am. We've dispatched an officer. Please stay inside and lock yourself in a room. Do not open the door." Sarah hung up and quickly moved to her bedroom. She locked the door behind her, her breath coming in short gasps. She didn't know what was happening, but she knew she wasn't safe. The scratching continued. Then, just as quickly as it had started, it stopped. Silence. Sarah held her breath, listening for any sign of movement. Nothing. Then she heard a voice, low, guttural whisper, "Let me in." The voice was coming from the other side of the door. Her heart stopped. She didn't move. She didn't even breathe. "Let me in, Sarah," the voice repeated. "I've been waiting for you." Suddenly the lights flickered and went out. The darkness was suffocating. She could hear the breathing now, right outside her door. Heavy, labored breaths like someone was struggling to breathe. The door handle began to rattle. The scratching started again, this time on the walls, the floor, the ceiling. And then, a knock on the door. 1, 2, 3 knocks. And then nothing. The silence was deafening. After what felt like hours, the police arrived. They found nothing outside, no footprints, no signs of anyone. The snow was untouched. But when they entered Sarah's apartment, they found the walls scratched, deep marks like claws had torn into the wood. The door had a strange imprint, a handprint, smeared in what looked like mud. The officer told her it was probably a prank. Maybe someone had gotten into her apartment and left after hearing the police sirens. But Sarah knew the truth. That night, she packed up her things and moved away. She couldn't stay in that apartment. She couldn't stay in that town. And every Christmas when the snow falls, Sarah remembers the tapping at the window, the voice that whispered her name, and the figure in the darkness. So, the next time you hear a knock at your door, or tap at your window, remember Sarah's story. Do not open it. Some things are better left outside.